In lesson 511, we're learning to explain the equivalent fractions rule. You'll need your whiteboard marker, and of course your math journal. On your whiteboard, please write 3 equivalent fractions for 1/4 and 3 equivalent fractions for 2/3. So remember, whatever you do to the bottom, you have to do to the top. So 3 fractions for each. Go ahead and pause your video while you work this one out. All right, I could multiply the top and bottom by 2 to get 2/8. Or multiply by 3 and get 3/12. Or multiply the top and bottom by 4 and get 4/16. 2/3, I could multiply by 3 and get 6/9, or multiply by 7 and get 14/21, or even multiply by 100 and get 200, 300. Oh, it's hard to say. All right, let's go ahead and move into your math journal. Please turn to page 184. Page 184. Fill in the blanks with greater than, less than, or equal to. So if we take 5 and we're multiplying it by a half, in other words, taking half of 5, is it going to be more than, less than, or equal to 5? If you take half of, that's what that means. It would be less than 5. Now going across with B. When you're multiplying by a whole number and a fraction, you're going to end up with a number that is greater. So 5 times 2 1/3 is going to be greater than 5. C, 5 times 5/4. Well, be careful because 5/4 is the same as 1 1/4. So when we're multiplying by an improper fraction, you're really multiplying by a whole number and a fraction. So it would be greater than 5. 5 times 86 87ths. This is just a little less than 1. So we know 5 times 1 would be 5. So 5 times something less than that is going to be less than 5. And 5 times 1 is equal to 5. Please write 3 fractions that are equal to 1. Remember that as long as the top number and the bottom number are the same, it equals 1 whole. B, use the fractions you wrote in part A to write 3 fractions equal to 4/5. In other words, we're going to multiply times 2 here and times 2 here. So we would get 8/10. Then we multiply by 4 fours. We're going to multiply by 4 on the top to get 16. 4 on the bottom to get 5 times 4 is 20. And then 5/5. We're going to multiply the top by 5 and the bottom by 5. 20 25ths. Explain how you know that the fractions you found in part B are equivalent to 4/5. So as long as I multiply the numerator and denominator by the same number. Again, if you need more time, pause it. They are equal. Number 3, look at the fractions in the table below. They can all be rewritten as equivalent fractions with a denominator of 12. What would you multiply each fraction by to make 12ths? Write the fraction name for one that you could use in each case. Then find the equivalent fraction with the denominator of 12. One row has been completed for you. So in the middle, you are to write a fraction name for 1. And then find the equivalent fraction. So let's change 3/4. Start with that one. Let's multiply each one by 3. So write 3/3. And then we go ahead and multiply. 3 times 3 is 9. And 4 times 3 is 12. Now let's just choose another number. Let's go 2 halves. So now we just multiply 5 times 2 is 10. 6 times 2 is 12. And then lastly, let's take 6/6. So we're going to multiply 1 times 6 to get 6. And 2 times 6 to get 12. All right, let's move on to math boxes. That was a really quick page for that. So let's move on to math boxes. And this would be on page 185. Page 185. You are going to fill in the blank with less than, greater than, or equal to. So if you multiply a whole number times a fraction, are you going to end up with a number greater than, less than, or equal to what you started with the 17? Less than. 19/20 is less than 1 whole. Multiplied by 13, same concept. You'll end up with a number less than 13. 11/12 times 52 compared to 52 times 11/12. It doesn't matter which order you multiply, they would be equal. Number 2, the denominators are not the same, so we're going to change them both to tenths. I just multiplied the denominators, 5 times 2, to get an equivalent denominator. So here we multiply by 2 on the bottom, so multiply by 2 in the numerator. 3 times 2 is 6. Multiplied by 5 on the bottom, so multiply by 5 on the top. Now we can go ahead and subtract. Tenths remains the same. We subtract the numerators. 6 minus 5 is 1, and 4 minus 2 is 2. Number 3, shade the rectangle to illustrate how you would fold paper to find 1/4 of 2/3. So let's start with 2/3. We're going to shade in 2/3 of it. And now it's been divided into 4s. And we're going to shade in 1/4 of that. There is 1/4. So how many are shaded? 2/12. Do you know I can simplify that and divide a 2 out of both the numerator and denominator, and 1/6 would be an equivalent fraction? Number 4, the table shows Chicago's typical monthly snowfall for several months. So you can see January, February, March, November, and December. Of the months shown, which has the greatest typical snowfall? So looking at these decimals, which one would be the greatest? 27 4/10 is the greatest, so January would have the most snowfall. Which one is the least? November. And number 5, the graph below shows the number of garden tools needed for different numbers of groups participating in a gardening day. How many tools are needed if 4 groups participate? So remember, you always go over when you're plotting points on a quadrant and then up. So we go over 4 and up. It would need 20. And lastly, let's go ahead and estimate 113 63/100. Let's call that 100. 27 14/100. Let's just call that 30. So our answer is going to be around 130. We're going to be very careful as we line up our decimal points. Watch your addition sign. Make sure you bring your decimal point straight down and go ahead and add. 3 plus 4 is 7. 6 plus 1 is 7. 3 plus 7 is 10. Carry your 1. 1 plus 1 is 2, and 2 plus 2 is 4. And bring your 1 straight down. How would you read this decimal? Read that aloud. Go ahead. All right, a shorter lesson today.